What is that?
A little woman who ran up and down in a red spotty cloak.
Where?
Up there.
Oh, a real one.
Yeah.
Just like in the story. Okay. You can tell the story.
Mrs. Tittlemouse by Beatrix wrote it in 1910.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. Once upon a time there was a wood mouse, and her name was Mrs. Tittlemouse. She lived in a bank under a hedge. Such a funny house. There were yards and yards of sandy passages leading to storerooms and nut cellars and seed cellars, all amongst the root of the hedge. There was a kitchen, a parlor, a pantry, and a larder. There was also Mrs. Tittlemouse's bedroom, where she slept in a little box bed. Mrs. Tittlemouse was a most terribly tidy, particular little mouse, always sweeping and dusting the soft sandy floors. Sometimes a beetle lost its way in the passages. Shush, 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 little dirty feet, said Mrs. Tittlemouse, clattering her dustpan. And one day, a little old woman ran up and down, red spotty cloak. Your house is on fire, mother ladybird. Fly away home to your children. Another day, a big, fat spider came in to shelter from the rain. But pardon us to stop, Miss Muffins. Go away, you bold, bad spider, leaving lands of cobweb all over my nice, clean house. She bundled the spider out at the window. He let himself down the hedge with a long, thin bit of string. Mrs. Tittlemouse went on her way to a distant storeroom to fetch cherry stones and thistledown seed for dinner. All along the passage she sniffed and looked at the floor. Hang on. I smell a smell of honey. As the cowslips outside the hedge, I'm sure I can see the marks of little dirty feet. Suddenly, around the corner, she made a Babbity Bumble. Ziz, biz, biz, said the bumblebee. Mrs. Tittlemouse looked at her severely. She wished that she had a broom. Good day, Babbity Bumble. I should be glad to buy some beeswax. But what are you doing down here? Why do you always come out of the window and say ziz, biz, biz? Mrs. Tittlemouse began to get cross. Ziz, whiz, whiz, replied Babbity Bumble, a peevish squeak. She settled down the passage and disappeared into a storeroom hatchman used for acorns. Mrs. Tittlemouse had eaten the acorns before Christmas. The storeroom also had been empty, was full of untidy dry moss. Mrs. Tittlemouse began to pull out the moss. 3 or 4 of her bees put their heads out and buzzed fiercely. I'm not in having any lodging. This is an intrusion. I will have them turned down. I wonder who will help me. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I will not have Mr. Jackson. He never wipes his feet. Biz, whiz, whiz. Mrs. Tittlemouse began to lead the bees till after dinner. When she got back to the parlor, she heard someone coughing in a fat voice, and there sat Mr. Jackson himself. He was sitting all over a small rocking chair, twiddling his thumbs and smiling with his feet on the fender. He lived in a drain below the hedge in a very dirty, wet ditch. How do you do, Mr. Jackson? Dearie me, you have got very wet. Thank you, Mr. Tittlemouse. I'll sit while I dry myself. So he sat and smiled, and the water dripped off his coattails. Mrs. Tittlemouse ran around with the moss. He sat such a while that he be asked if he would take some dinner. First she offered him cherry stones. Thank you, Mr. Tittlemouse. No teeth, said Mr. Jackson. He opened his mouth now unnecessarily wide. He certainly not had a tooth in his head. Then she offered him thistledown seed. Thank you, Miss Tittlemouse. Tiddly willy. Poof, poof, poof. Said Mr. Jackson. He blew the thistledown all over the room. Thank you, Miss Tittlemouse. Now what I really should like would be a little dish of honey. I'm afraid I not got any, Mr. Jackson. Tiddly willy, Miss Tittlemouse. I can smell it. That is why I came to call. Mr. Jackson rose ponderously from the table and began to look into the cupboards. Mrs. Tittlemouse followed him with a dishcloth to wipe his large wet footmarks off the parlor floor. When he convinced himself that there was no honey in their cupboards, he began to walk down the passage. Indeed, we'll stick fast, Mr. Jackson. Tiddly willy, Mr. Tittlemouse. There were 3 quick-calling people hiding in the pig rack. 2 of them got away, but the littlest one he caught. Then he squeezed into the larder. Miss Butterfly was tasting the sugar, but she flew away out of the window. Tiddly willy, Miss Tittlemouse, you seem to have plenty of visitors. And without any invitation, said Mrs. Thomasina Tittlemouse. They went along the sandy passage. Chilly willy. Buzz whiz whiz! He met Babity around the corner and snatched her up and put her down again. I do not like bumblebees. They are all over bristles, said Mr. Jackson, wiping his mouth with his coat sleeve. Get out, you nasty old toad, shrieked Babity Bumble. I shall go distracted, scolded Mrs. Tittlemouse. She shut herself up in a nutsack. When Mr. Jackson pulled out the bee's nest, he seemed to have no objection to stings. When she ventured to come out, everybody had gone away. But the untidy was something dreadful. Never did I see such a mess. Smears of honey and moss, thistledown, and marks of big and little dirty feet, all of my nice clean house. She gathered up the moss and remains of the beeswax. Then she went out and fetched some twigs to partly close up the front door. I will make it too small for Mr. Jackson, said. She fetched soft soap and flannel and a new scrubbing brush from the storeroom. But she was too tired to do anything more, for she fell asleep in her chair. And then she went to bed. Will it ever be tidy again, said poor Mrs. Tittlemouse. Next morning she got up very early and began a spring cleaning that which lasted a fortnight. She swept and scrubbed and dusted, and she rubbed up the furniture with beeswax and polished her little tin spoon. It was all beautifully neat and clean. She gave a party to 5 of her little mice. We found Mr. Jackson. He smelled the party and came out the bank, but he could not squeeze in at the door. So they handed him up a corn cup full of honeydew through the window, and he was not at all offended. Tiddly willy, your very good health, Mrs. Tittlemouse. The end.